Good morning, everyone. It is Thursday, January the 9th, 2020. It is currently 9:26 a.m. Central Time. Well, at Victory Baptist Church, I have done two sermons now looking at the history, origin, and doctrine of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Now, the reason I'm doing this is because of a comment left on our YouTube channel. Obviously, someone who's been greatly influenced by Seventh-day Adventist doctrine and theology. Maybe they are a Seventh-day Adventist themselves. They've never came out and absolutely stated it, but basically they left a comment telling us that, hey, if you worship on Sunday, you're following the creation of the Catholic Church, you're following the Pope, and you're dishonoring God as creator, etc., etc. I'm paraphrasing the comment. And because of that comment, I'm like, okay, Seventh-day Adventist, let's spend some time. So we've looked at the history and origin. You can listen to those sermons under the VBC podcast. And we started getting into the subject, obviously, of the Sabbath and as Christian. Well, right now we're just looking at the word Sabbath. We're looking up every verse from Matthew to Revelation where the word Sabbath appears. And we're trying to say, okay, the Old Testament, clearly Saturday was the day. That was the day of the Sabbath. Now, how does that relate to us in Christianity? What are we to do? We worship on a Sunday. Are we violating the commandment? Did the commandment change? How are we to treat Sunday? Do we treat Sunday just as, well, we go to church and then do what we want? Or are we to treat Sunday as a Sabbath? There are a lot of questions that we have to answer. There are a lot of verses that we have to continue to work on. We're really digging into this, trying to be fair, trying to be honest. And that's why we're going to look up every verse in the New Testament that uses the word Sabbath. And we've already started. You can, if you listen to part 2 of our series on the Seventh-day Adventist Church, you'll hear us working through all of those verses. I think we've made it up to the book of Acts. And we're gonna do our best to be fair and to try to find the truth. And if we find a truth that goes against what we think, then we'll be willing to change because truth is all that matters. So why am I doing a live broadcast right now here on the Theology Central podcast? Well, I'm going to add to the discussion. About 15 minutes ago, 20 minutes ago, a friend in Nebraska sent me a link to a video that's about the Sabbath. Now, this doesn't try to answer any questions in regards to, is Sunday the day we should worship? Do we treat Sunday as a Sabbath? But it brings up a lot of interesting points about the Sabbath, a lot of interesting points even related to the resurrection of Christ. And it's only like 5 minutes long. It comes to us from the Bible Project, and I think it's worth your consideration. And now they say a lot of things. They don't give a lot of Bible passages and everything. They're kind of basically telling a narrative that comes from the Bible. They don't necessarily sit there and give you all the verses. So I would definitely challenge you to listen to this carefully, think about it, look some things up. And, let me know what you think. You can email me at newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com, and, just adds to our study. So members of Victory Baptist Church, pay close attention to it. For those who are following us online and listening to the sermons, let me know if you need help finding the sermons. You may hear me somewhere else and you don't even know how to find everything. Email me at newsif@yahoo.com and I'll be more than happy to give you a link to everything so that you can participate in this very important study. Not just understanding the doctrine and theology of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, but really digging into this whole thing. What should a Christian do on Sunday? Is Sunday even the right day? Did the Sabbath change? How should we approach this? There's lots of questions. This video just kind of adds some interesting points to the discussion. It doesn't solve it, but I think it's worth your time and consideration. So I'm going to play it for you, and that'll be the end. So just listen to this. It's about 5 minutes long. I think it is worth your time. Here we go.
The number 7 is a big deal in the Bible.
Yeah, in biblical Hebrew, the word 7 is connected to the idea of fullness or completeness.
And that's something we all long for, but don't often experience. Instead, we find ourselves working endlessly, fighting back chaos with no real rest.
Yes. Now keep all that in mind as we turn to Genesis 1 in the Bible. It begins with darkness and disorder, but then God speaks to bring about light and order so that life can flourish.
And this happens over the course of 6 days.
Each day is marked with the phrase, "There was evening and there was morning." But on the seventh day, something special happens.
God stops and rests.
Right. Creation is brought to its completion on the seventh day. And that phrase, "there was evening and there was morning," it doesn't appear on day 7.
It's like a day with no end.
On the seventh day, God's presence fills his creation. The land provides for all of God's creatures, including humans, who are appointed to rule the world with God forever.
Kings and queens of the seventh-day rest. I can get into that.
But the humans are deceived by a dark power, and they forfeit that rest. They're exiled into the wilderness, where they have to work as slaves to the land.
Until they die and return to the dust from which they came.
But God wants to restore humanity back to that seventh-day rest. So he chooses to give the family of Israel that experience of ultimate rest so they can share it with others.
But how? They're in Egypt, slaves to an oppressive empire who's grinding them into the dust.
So God confronts Egypt and he liberates the Israelites, taking them through the darkness and chaos on the way to the promised land.
Now, while they're on their way, they find themselves in the wilderness. It's easy to get lost. Life is a struggle. They're not in the land of rest yet.
But while they're on the way, God invites them in the wilderness to start living as if they're in the promised land.
But how do you practice the future rest in the wilderness?
Well, God tells them that every seventh day they are to stop their work, or in Hebrew, to Shabbat, so that they can rest and enjoy God's good world.
So take a whole day to live as if the ultimate rest has already come.
Yeah, this is the Sabbath, celebrated every week on the seventh day. But there's more. The Sabbath is just one of 7 festivals that Israel practiced every year, each one anticipating that seventh-day rest.
That is a lot of 7s.
And there's even more. Every 7 years, the Israelites were to liberate slaves, forgive debts, and let the land rest for a whole year. And then, every 7 times 7 years was the ultimate seventh-day rest, called the Year of Jubilee. If anyone had lost their land or gone into debt, all was forgiven, everything restored.
Wow, so the Sabbath, these feasts, the Year of Jubilee, it's all pointing towards the hope of future rest.
Right. Now, when the Israelites went into the land, they forgot their God, and so they forfeited their chance for rest in the promised land.
They're exiled and enslaved again by an oppressive nation, led back into a world of chaos and disorder.
But Israel's prophets said that their exile would end one day, and that the ultimate jubilee of freedom and rest would come, but generations go by, and they're still waiting.
It's at this dark point in the story that Jesus appears, and he launches his public mission on a Sabbath day.
Yeah, he read aloud from the scroll of Isaiah, saying that it was time for all captives and slaves to be released because this was the year of the Lord's favor.
What did he mean, this is the year of the Lord's favor?
He was talking about the ultimate jubilee.
So Jesus is claiming that seventh-day rest would come through him.
Right, he said that he was the Lord of the Sabbath, and he confronted disorder and darkness in all of its forms, liberating people from sickness, sin, even from death itself.
Yet, Jesus was killed, so even his work was undone.
Well, it seemed that way. But notice, Jesus timed his death to take place at the end of the week. His body rested in a tomb during the Sabbath, and on the 8th day, he rose from the dead.
Oh wait, the 8th day? You mean the first day of a new week?
Exactly. Jesus' resurrection was like the first day of a new creation, where God's light and life broke into the darkness.
So because of the resurrection, we have hope in God's promise of future rest. But we're not there yet. It's like we're still in the wilderness, where we experience struggle and pain.
But as we journey towards that ultimate seventh day, Jesus invites us to experience a taste of real rest now by following him. Or in his words, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest."